With so many loved analog horrors that leave us a mark because of how good they are, there's always the other side of the coin. Analog horrors that, despite having a crazy potential, they were badly executed. In this video, we'll be revisiting YouTube's most hated analog horror. The Painter was an analog horror that used an uncommon way of telling its story: police files. I've already covered the early stages of this series in the past, but since new episodes came out, why not remake it? It begins strongly with the tape Faces. The description says that the channel owner found several VHS tapes in the basement of his apartment. We follow a lot of homicides linked to the most violent and mentally deranged serial killers from the United States. The beginning of this mystery begins with 3 paintings of 3 homicide victims: Carla Gray, who died with 36 stab wounds and had her teeth removed, Jackie Graham, who drowned after being stabbed 27 times, and James Miller, who had his face ripped off and his wrists opened. 2 months later, the police would find another 7 paintings, which at the moment made no sense, but later on will be important. With the crazy serial killer still on the loose, the police decided to make this case public. 3 photos were sent to the police, 2 of 2 previous victims, and a new one named Jimmy. And it ends with the statement that a self-portrait of the perpetrator was found. The Lighthouse opens with the disappearance of an agent and his family, after Bill Collins, the agent, found the previous self-portrait in their home. In the attic, the police found their 2-month-old daughter hanging from the ceiling, and 12 days later, the family car was found in the ocean with another painting. While covering the area, the police decided to investigate a lighthouse not far from where the car was found. There, they found 3 bodies: Danielle Williams, Jennifer White, and Lisa White, and a barrel containing the remains of the Collins family, which strangely contained extreme volumes of amphetamine and 4 photos. Now we move on to In the Walls. Another video, another missing case. The Beck twins went missing, and 5 days later both were found dead inside an abandoned factory. For some reason, Corey's lower body was stitched to Margaret's upper body. Margaret died with her neck and jaw broken by a brick being shoved down her throat, and Corey got castrated. This is where people understandably began to have problems with the series, especially if we connect this case with one of the names of the previous paintings. But let's keep going. After police questioned Corey's family, neighbors, and friends, witnesses claimed that a week before the twins disappeared, Corey was challenged to stay inside a cabin near the lake for an hour, only for him to leave 4 minutes later with his arm badly injured. This obviously led the police to investigate the cabin, where they found a crawlspace that had Corey's camera, an attempt by the killer to hide his footprints. The clue tells us that the situation has gotten worse to the point where a private investigator was hired to help police find the bodies in the paintings. Kane, the private investigator, after finding one of the victims, disappeared a week later. The police were called, and inside, the crime scene made no sense. The killer apparently entered through the basement, broke the dog's legs, and attacked Kane in his room and dragged him into the kitchen. And for some reason, there was a number 2 painted with his own blood. The painting left behind implied that he was in the pipes. But yet, police moved on with no identified suspects. Until now. Witness. Another case. Tina, Laura Rosenberg, and Jack Stryker disappeared on Tina's 20th birthday when they had planned to go on a beach trip. Their trip was cut short when 2 days later, their car was found in the middle of the forest. When the police found and searched the car, screams were heard from the woods. Storming into the forest, the police found Tina, who had her feet and arms cut off, and Flora, who had died. Jack was nowhere to be seen. After escorting Tina from the crime scene and bringing her to the hospital, her testimony says when she woke up in the car, Jack was gone and she could hear someone approaching. She was injected with something, and the last thing she remembered was being tied up to a tree and watching her sister being killed. Tina, being the only survivor of these killers, told police how the killer looked like, and finally a police sketch was made. The problem that I have with the series for now is how it keeps repeating the same formula, but I'm going to cut him some slack since apparently it's his first project. And when you thought that the killer couldn't be more disgusting, you were wrong. Pigs begins with another missing agent, Ironford. The investigation began, and the police noticed a horrible smell coming from the barn, so they started there. May's body was found severely mangled, with tests concluding that her cause of death was internal bleeding. A dead horse was also found, which his cause of death was a heart failure from a sildenafil overdose. It gets worse. At the milk house, the police conclude that the killers had been there for days. Ian's granddaughter's head was found wrapped with a mattress, the faces of former victims were nailed to the wall, and several pig carcasses were found, one of them containing Ian's body. And obviously, paintings were also found, which confirmed what happened to May. This video ends with the recovered part of the tape found at the barn. easily one of the most disgusting episodes. This is about the time when the controversies started to become more obvious. Not only because of what was happening in the series, but also because the creator didn't take criticism well. His series relied solely on shock horror, and for last, the most understandable controversy. The way the series touched on sensitive topics was tasteless. The essay on Corey and May's situation added nothing to the story except disgust and hatred. Maybe the idea was to get us angry and wish that the perpetrators get caught as soon as possible. With that, we move on to family, where we finally begin to see some improvements from the creator. At this point in time, homicide reports have been getting worse and worse. 2 new victims, Bruce and Isabel Jackson. Bruce lost his head, literally, and Isabel, hiding in the bathroom, calls 911. For some reason, Isabel ends up giving the wrong address, perhaps in a moment of extreme stress, but it gets weirder. Coincidentally, this address reveals another crime scene, which means 3 more victims. Janice died of strangulation by the umbilical cord, Paul died of asphyxiation by Janice's fetus, and Zeke is never seen again. Which makes me ask if Isabel at least knew the family? Eventually the police tracked down the original location, but it was too late. Isabel was lobotomized with a hammer drill, and Bruce was dead. However, in this crime scene, the culprits made a critical mistake. And now the police have confirmed that both killers were actually working together. Meat tells us about another case, this time of a doctor, Fred, who, after not showing up to work for several days, a wellness check was conducted. Neighborhood witnesses claim to have heard a dog barking inside his house the night before his body was found. Fred never had a dog. Inside the house, the police found a large amount of sildenafil. If this doesn't already tell them that this was done by the same perpetrators, in Fred's room, they find another painting implying that Fred's cat was sanded. And it just stops there, and moves on to the next victim. George White. Before his body was found, witnesses claimed they heard a dog barking, even though George didn't have a dog either. The corpse was unrecognizable, as he had been stabbed 487 times, and 4 of the wounds had seminal fluid. This is just getting ridiculous. And lastly, Michael and Sarah, who were abducted from their own house. And for last we have Hell, by far the best one out there. Hell begins with an anonymous tip about trespassers at an abandoned textile and paint factory. Upon investigating the site, one of the workshops had parts of 5 different victims and remains that had been sewn as if they were clothes. Honestly, one of the best beginnings of the series. Getting to see what the police saw at the crime scene is way more effective. Inside the factory, they discovered that it was actually the killer's hideout. A total of 14 bodies varying in decomposition were found scattered throughout the factory. I don't have to tell you that they died in a gruesome manner. When going down 2 floors, the police found something that sounded the alarm. The exact same phrases said by Tina after having survived the attack. With Tina surviving, it wasn't a matter of if, but when they would come back together. A wellness check on her is conducted, and we cut to Officer Nathan, who was the first to respond. When he heard screams, Nathan entered, only to find the house in total disarray and blood on the floor. See for yourself.
Raise your hands right now! Do not move! Let me see your hands right now!
Nathan came just in time to save Tina, but sadly not before the damage was already done. Sienna Rosenberg died, and Tina had her eyes and ears punctured by needles. Later both were identified as Bill Collins, the supposed police officer who went missing, and Mona Linus, who confessed to more than 100 murders. This body cam itself redeemed the series for me, honestly, especially because this gave birth to meme edits, which were actually hilarious. Now closing thoughts. The painter is summarized in a simple way. It is a compilation of several homicides committed by the 2 most violent and mentally disturbed killers in the United States. Bill Collins, a police officer who faked his death, and Mona Linus, who together after each death left paintings behind as a way to mock their victims. The problem many people have with this series is that it over-explains what happened to the victims, thus making the mystery disappear. I'm going to play the devil's advocate here and say that I don't see a reason why the police should have been vague about what's going on, especially in a police archive, but I completely get it. It removes the fun of being a detective, which is what people want from an ARG or analog horror. I liked the idea itself, but it was way over the top sometimes. The formula got repetitive, and the lack of specific locations and dates was annoying. The last 2 episodes, however, were a huge step in the right direction, and I believe that the series itself can still be redeemable, at least story-wise. Since from here onwards, the creator can either focus on the killer's backstory, with maybe Mona being sentenced to the death penalty, or better, a documentary in the future talking about them. Despite all the controversies and the ups and downs in the series, the painter was alright. The idea was cool, the storytelling was poorly executed, visuals slowly started to get better, and the paintings were amazing. But what do you think about this? And if you want more analog horrors to watch, why not this one? A huge thanks to our Patreon support Pawn and you viewer. Until next time, take care my friend.